Hey, I'm Kylie. I'm going to teach you today how to draw a basic skirt with a waistband. So here we have our front and back view. Quickly, our front view is our front of our skirt. When we draw a garment, we generally draw on the half. So we draw one half of the garment, get it to the point where we're satisfied, and then we copy, reflect and paste it onto the other side, and we either join them together or we butt them and place them up against each other. So just whether we butt against or join, but it depends on the garment. So we're gonna do both in this garment, and I'll show you just quickly. Here's the front. And you can see that in selection tool, I've selected that and the entire shape has been selected. That front is one whole shape. Whereas the back here underneath, if I ungroup that and I just drag off, is a left and right side. Here is my waistband, which is one whole piece, and the back waistband is a left and right piece. And some back, those are the front darts. So the exterior of the back is, left and right side, butted up against each other. The left is a whole closed shape and the right is a whole closed shape, but they're just placed up against each other so you can see the back seam. And the left and right waistband is, they are two separate shapes as well, and they are just placed up against each other. And there are the back darts, and we have here a little buttonhole with a buttonhole and some thread, and there's some stitching. But today we're not going to do the buttonhole, and we are not going to do the stitching, and that's the kick flap stitch. We're going to make a little kick flap there. So why don't we get started? Excuse me. If I zoom in, I am going to drag this whole garment off to the right hand side so you can keep an eye on what we're doing and while we're drawing our garment. So grab your pen tool, just P for pen. I want, when we draw the outline here, the half, I just want to do it in outline mode, just no fill for the time being, and then we'll colour it in, we'll fill it in. And the reason why I'm doing this is just so you can see where on the template I'm placing my anchor points and line segments. Okay, so this skirt is a waisted skirt, so let's start up here at the waistline. So just below the waist, I've got just place a little anchor point in there, click. Come up to the waist, up to the waistline, and click another anchor point. Come down to this hip line outside of the template and click. Come down to, I don't know, just look, just keep it. You can see my smart guides. Just come down to a vertical point. You can see there the pink line that's appeared above there. That pink line is showing a vertical position. So just keep following that. If you're really light-handed with your mouse, you'll feel your mouse being guided down in a vertical plane. So just click just somewhere above the knee. And what I want to do is make the center front point a bit lower than the side seam, because just looking at the skirt here, the center front curve, just visually, just to make it look three-dimensional and to indicate the shape that it's a skirt, a curve. You can see it lies just slightly lower than the side seam there. So we're going to do that as well. So just a little bit, just on a little angle, just click it in and make sure you're keeping on that center line there. So now I want to we're going to leave this shape open. So, excuse me, you can see I've got my tail there. Just press escape to get out of that. And click on your selection tool and click on your artboard to deselect. Okay. Now, a couple of things I've noticed. I'll come back to this, sorry. What I just want to say is we'll go over the anchor points. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anchor points. Out of these 5 anchor points, 1, 2 at the hip, and 3 down there at the center front hem are going to be converted into curves. I don't want this one converted into a curve, and I don't want this one. The reason why is because when you're beginning the more handles you have, the harder your garment is to control, because handles mean curves, and you're going to have to adjust every single handle if you want to make adjustments to your curves. So let's just keep it simple, folks, and convert the center front, the hip, and the center front hem. So to convert an anchor point, you need your anchor point tool. So click on that. You can see now I'm in my anchor point tool, and just drag in the direction that you drew. Now you can see here, if I'm very light-handed, my guide I can feel my handle being slightly magnetized, snapped into that horizontal position. I can also do this by, I haven't released my mouse by the way, by just tapping shift, and shift brings your handles to a horizontal position. And I just release my mouse and release shift. You can also see a good handle position for this skirt, the tip of the handle. If you have it just before this, front hip line here, waistline, waist hip line, just about there. It's kind of halfway between center and side, isn't it? So that looks good. You want your handles in a perfectly horizontal position. If they're not perfectly horizontal, you will not get the curve that you want. Okay, so now grab, still in your anchor point tool, click on the handle, don't release your mouse, and just drag those handles out. And look, you can feel it snapping into a vertical plane there. So it's actually snapping into that line there that I've drawn, that path. So just that's fine. I think I'll just release there. What I'm going to come back and do is bring that anchor point in. But I just want to come down and do the last anchor point, convert the last anchor point into a curve, and then we'll come back and do that. So I'm going to drag out this handle, and you can see with my smart guides, it's snapping into my smart guides. If you haven't got your smart guides, hold down shift and just drag your handles out. I haven't released my mouse. Look, I think there's pretty good. Again, it seems like the handle tip is halfway between that line and that line. That gives me a nice curve through there. And once again, make sure your handles are horizontal at your hem. If they're not, you will not get the perfect curve. Now, let's deal with this. Let's bring this in. Click on your anchor point tool. Click on your hip anchor, and you can see it's turned red. That means it's in selection mode. So now I tap on my right arrow and just tap in. All right. Now, just sitting outside of the hip's good. And watch what happens if I tap down to this curve. Feel like this is a bit bulbous. So I'm going to tap down. You can see when I tap downwards, it sort of flattens off that curve a little bit, just because I'm lengthening the curve, the line really. So just tap down till it comes just below there if you want. It's one way to do it. You don't have to. You could have it up here. So anyway, now I can see this is flared out a little bit. So now I click on that anchor point and tap in. Tap, 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 tap. Just visually, if it looks like it's in a nice vertical position with that anchor point, just do it by eye. And you want it to look like that, straight, be a straight skirt. So let's have a little look. Now, it's possible that your anchor point could be sitting out here, or it might be sitting out here, or it may be sitting in there, but wherever it is, you can just click on it, click, and you can right arrow out or left arrow into your desired location. So if I zoom out here, what I want to do is further adjust this curve. The handle that lies above the line means that handle controls that curve. The handle that lies above the curve is the handle that controls it. So I want to just flatten out this one. So if I touch on my handle with my anchor point tool, not my anchor point tool, my direct select tool, and I just reduce the length of the handle, i.e. make it shorter, you can see it's flattening off. Okay, so you can obviously do that to the bottom as well if you want. Now let's have a look. I like to put a fill in this stage so I can see how it looks. Click on the artboard to deselect. You can make further adjustments if you want by clicking on the handle and, you know, increasing the line until you're absolutely happy with that. What I just want you to make sure is that your anchor point handle is close to the hip. So let's make the dart. So when you do your darts, choose no fill. We make our darts half the value of the outline. So all our outlines are going to be 1 point, so let's make the dart 0.5. If I click on the waistline there, what I'm essentially trying to do is follow the line of the waist, the hip through there. So if I click on the waist and I just give it a little dart, maybe down to about there, you can notice I've got my little red tail and I press escape to get rid of that. And I'll click on my selection tool and then I click on my artboard to deselect. It looks good. You want to make sure your dart is butted into the waistline. So this is great. So let's copy and reflect and paste it to the other side. So in your selection tool, grab, marquee over that, that side, that unclosed shape, and the dart, marquee over the lot so that's all selected. Right click, or transform, reflect. I've got preview ticked and I copy, and I've made a copy. You can see it's copied and reflected that shape. And if I start dragging with my mouse and hold down Shift, I'm dragging it to exactly the same, on the other side on exactly the same plane, so I can easily join those two center front anchor points to the other ones. So if I just release my mouse and then I release Shift, I just arrow in at this point, just arrow in until boom, that little gap disappears. Okay, my gap hasn't disappeared. Have no fear. Zoom in, I'll show you. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Direct select tool, let's marquee over. Don't release your mouse. Now release your mouse, and you can see I have selected these two anchor points, the left center front and the right center front anchor point. Now I'm going to right click and average. When I average anchor points, it basically brings them in one on top of the other. So one snaps on top of the other one. And yeah, and then that enables me to, when I join them, that it makes a perfect join. And then those two anchor points will fuse into one. So I'll average and I'll show you, and I just want you to watch the screen. You watch these two snap into each other. One will snap into the other. There we go. Now I simply right click and I join. Okay, so they become one now. If I zoom out, and now I'm going to do exactly the same down at my hem. So you can see I've got two little zoom in, two little anchor points there. Now with my direct select tool, I just want to marquee over there. So I've selected them both, and I right click. Oh, good. And I'm averaging, and watch them snap into each other. Oh, goodness. So I've obviously done something. I think I've got the whole shape in selection. Yeah, can you see that? If yours does that, you can see the whole shape is being selected. What you only want to do is make sure those two anchor points are selected because they're the ones that you're working on. So look, let me just go to your direct select tool, click on the artboard to deselect, and I'll just do it again. Now simply just obviously I touched some, the outline, and I selected the whole thing. So anyway, just marquee over. So you've only got those two selected, and if I go over here, yep, you'll see I haven't done that. So I'll zoom in. There you go. Right click, average. You'll see them snap in. Yep. Right click, join. Awesome. Good stuff. So there we go. So at this point, this is a perfectly joined shape. If I touch on my anchor points, handles perfectly horizontal, spread out like airplane wings, and same up the top, perfectly horizontal, perfectly lovely and vertical, lovely and vertical. What you'll notice is you can tell it's joined because in my selection tool, when I select my shape, when I select select a path, a left or right path, and the whole shape is highlighted. That means the whole it's a closed shape. What you'll also notice is the dart has disappeared. If I go Command Y or Control Y, you can see actually this is line mode now. This gives you a lot of information about your drawing that sometimes you can't see in preview mode, in normal preview mode. So what's happened is this skirt has been layered on top of that dart. So what I want to do is make the skirt sit behind the dart. So the skirt is sitting behind both darts. So if I right click and arrange and send the skirt to the back, now the skirt lies behind these two darts. I click on my artboard to deselect. So this is great. Now what I want to do is make my waistband. At this point, I just want to show you, in my direct select tool, if I click on this little line segment, a line segment is a line that lies between two anchor points, and a path is a series of line segments joined by anchor points. So this whole waist is in fact a path because it's two line segments joined by a center front anchor. Okay, and it's got these flanked by these two outside anchor points. Now, if I just click on the line segment and I go Control C to copy and Control F to paste to the front, F for front, that's how you can remember. You can see now if I drag that off, I've only copied and pasted the left side, which is fine, and this is going to be great when I do my back. But at the moment, I just want I'll delete that. I want to actually copy and paste this entire waist path. And in order to do that, I need to select that center front anchor. It's turned red, it's in selection mode. That will allow me to copy the left and right line segment as one. Now if I go Control Command C and Command F to paste to the front, and then I lose my fill, and I go over here and I just press 10 points. I want it to be 10 points thickness. Now I've got a round cap. It's defaulted to round cap. So if I choose butt cap, it squares it off because I don't want rounded tips on my waistband. So go to Object, Expand. Expanding a line turns the line into a vector shape. Turns it into a shape, which is going to be my waistband. I press OK. Now you can see that? It's selected all the way around the outside. So this is now a vector shape. Now to colour this in a really easy peasy way is go to your eyedropper. So you're in your eyedropper tool and suck up that information on the skirt, click on the skirt, and it will transfer that information into your selection. So the red fill, the black outline, that is 1 point, has been transferred into that waistband selection. What you'll notice now is the darts sit on front of that waistband. So all you don't do anything except for right click and arrange and bring the waistband to the front. Now the waistband sits on front. So now I'm going to right click and I'm going to zoom in. Not right click, sorry, I'm just in my selection tool. I just went to selection tool. So now just go to your artboard and to deselect. Now I want to bring this point here to outside the waist, and I want to bring this one out just slightly. So direct select, click on your anchor. See it's red, it's been selected. Left arrow out slightly. Go down here, click. Now that one's been deselected and this one is in edit mode. And just right arrow out. Now look, you can either have this point here sitting right on there aligned. That is equally as fine as having it one little tiny step out, so it's a little bit of a bump there. I personally like to have it a little bump there because I think when I see a skirt from the back that's got a waistband, you can actually see a bit of a the seam there. So that's what I like to do. You know, personal preference. I wouldn't say one's necessarily right and the other one's wrong. It's just a matter of personal preference. I'm going to do exactly the same here. So click on the top anchor point and arrow out. I want to make sure that I'm sitting just outside the waistband there. I mean, sorry, the side template. Now click on that one, and that's deselected that one. And now that one's in edit mode, and I'm just going to arrow out slightly. Right arrow out. Now, selection tool, and I deselect on my artboard to click on my artboard to deselect. So if I zoom out, that looks great. That looks excellent. And I'm going to Control Command S for save. Now, what we're going to do is do the back. So selection tool, marquee over the whole skirt, and Option, Alt or Option, press that down. I haven't got my hand on the mouse at the moment. You can see that it's got a duplicate arrows come up. That means it's ready to duplicate. And if I just drag, I can drag a copy away. And I'll drag it over, and if I hold Shift, it keeps it on the same plane. And if I release my mouse, and then I release Alt and Shift at the same time. So I just drag this over a little bit more. So what I want to do is delete the waistband off, delete the right dart off. I'm going to keep this dart because I'm actually going to use it for my back dart, but just lengthen it slightly. So go to your direct selection tool, marquee over that whole right side, and you'll notice now that these anchor points here, the waist, hip, and seam, outside seam there, is in edit mode. So that means and these ones are not. So that means that I'm basically going to delete everything up to those points. They're my little barriers. So if I just press delete, it'll delete that whole right side. Left side. Right. Now the next thing we need to do is create a seam. Now you can see there, the left and right sides have a seam. It's one shape. So I'm just going to do that. All you need to do is go to your pen tool, P for pen. Don't use the wiggly line one. That's not a pen tool. It's not the pen tool we want. Just P for pen, or just click on your tool, click on the anchor, and come up here, and you'll notice if you're very light-handed with your mouse, it'll just click into that top anchor point, and you just press click. Okay, so now if I just have a little look, see? Actually, don't have a look, see? Just take your hand off the mouse and keep that anchor point in edit mode. It's red, or whatever color your layer is, and just arrow up. What you want to do is arrow up so that your center front anchor point is slightly higher than your side seam. Because your back waistband at center back, your back waist is always higher than your front, and and the way to do that is in this drawing is to make it slightly higher than the waist at the side. And go to your selection tool to have a look and deselect. Click on the artboard. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to see. If I clicked on that anchor, you'd see it's still, that handle is still lovely and horizontal. Nothing's changed there. Now let's lengthen the dart. Click on the top of the dart and just arrow up. Still keeping in line with this line here coming through, down through the hip. And I'm just going to click on that one now, and you can see that one's deselected and that one's selected. I just want to arrow down a little bit, just a couple of 3 or 4 notches, just to make it slightly longer, because the length of the dart is always a bit longer on the back to create the curvature, to allow for the curvature of the butt. Yeah, so it's just slightly longer. And now I want to make my left waistband. So you remember before we had clicked on the center front anchor to select the left line segment and the right line segment? Well, this time we don't have a right one. So we're only clicking on the line segment. If you Control C to copy and Control F or Command F to copy to the front, lose your fill. Come over here. 10 points is our waistband. So folded to round cap, click butt cap, and object expand. Okay. There you can see it's made a vector shape again. Eyedropper to copy the information of the skirt, and once again the scenarios happen with the dart sits on top of the waistband. So right click, arrange, bring to front, and you can see here we need to adjust at the side our anchor point so that our waist comes out here. Look, you know, so click on your anchor point, click on the artboard. It's tempting, I know, when you click on the, so let's do, hold on. Okay, I'll do this one first. So it's tempting when you'll start to realize that you can actually click and drag this out with your mouse. But when you do that, you run the risk of kind of bringing it off path. So I recommend that you just, when you click on it, you just right anchor, left anchor out. That'll give you 100% control. You can be absolutely sure that your anchor point is keeping on the same trajectory as that line, and it's not reducing the width of your waistband, and it's not lengthening it by, you know, lengthening it by being placed a bit lower. So I'll just Control Z there for a minute. So I recommend arrowing out. So once again, I want to bring this one in. So click on that. You can see that this one's in edit mode, and just right arrow, a couple of notches, a couple of spaces. And it is 100% the safest and best way to get perfect waistband. So if I zoom out, I can see that looks pretty good. So what I want to do is select, copy, reflect, etc. So copy, drag over the whole shape, right click, transform, reflect, copy, and just drag and hold shift to the other side. Release your mouse, release shift, and arrow in. Okay, if I click on my artboard to deselect, you can see the center line here looks really thick. I don't want it to look thick. I want it to look like that, so that that seam line looks like a similar weight to the outside lines of my skirt. So if yours has done that, like mine, just keep selection mode, marquee over it again, and just arrow in a couple of notches so that that line overlaps, the right one overlaps the left one a bit more. And that looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfectly exactly the same, but that looks good to me. Yeah, I could go one more. I want it just to be a perfectionist, and I don't know if that's made much of a difference, but anyway, that's how you do it. So now I've got two things that I'm doing. I need to make, now that I've created this, I need to copy the skirt and make it a shade darker and place it on the back of the front skirt so I can see a back view from the front. But I also need to have a back skirt like that. So why don't I just Alt and drag it down there. Okay, this is going to be my interior of the back of the front view. So click on your artboard to deselect. Now I'm going to individually select all of these 4 pieces because I'm going to make them a shade darker. So if I click with my selection tool, click, hold down shift to make a multiple selection, click, you can see now that those 2 are both selected, click, click. Now you can see all 4 have been selected. So release your shift button now and all 4 of those panels, objects, shapes, whatever you want to call them, in selection, have been selected. So now this is where the color guide comes in handy. This is your fill color. If you want to make a shade, a tint by adding white to make it a little bit lighter. You can select anything to the right there, or if you want to add black, make it a shade. Select anything to the left of that fill color. So I just want to make it one shade darker. Perfect. So sewing your selection tool, marquee over it, and group. When I group, it sort of temporarily, holds all these elements together so that they can be moved around the artboard as one. And it comes in handy a lot. So now we're going to place this one, basically we're going to place it at the back of the skirt. So to do that, hover over the front of the skirt. Your smart guides will help you click it into place. Just click it so it looks like you're covering the skirt, and then right click and arrange, and you guessed it, send to the back. Now I'm still in selection mode. I'm just actually going to click my artboard to deselect. What I've noticed is that underneath, you can see it's a thick black line. Some of the underneath hemline is showing. So I'm going to show you that if you just select that and arrow up a couple of spots, let's see what happens. You can see now that that's been reduced, and that looks great to me. Like, I can't see it underneath. I'm going to go over one last thing I want to show you. Is you'll notice actually I've done a miracle job of actually aligning the waistband, the front and back waistbands together at the side, but sometimes you'll find that it's a bit like this. Okay, so I would recommend that you do it anyway. Even though looks like I've done a really good job, I'm going to average the front and the back waistband together, these two anchor points here, so that they're perfectly aligned. So what I'll do is, with my direct selection tool, select it and just select, marquee over those two anchor points. There they are, 1, 2. And right click, average. Okay, now you can see it's sitting exactly one on top of the other. That is how you'll get a perfect alignment. So I'm going to do the same. Selection tool, click on your artboard to deselect. Now select over. And I'm going to do the same. I'll zoom in so you can see. Right click, average. Both. And now it's brought them together so they're perfectly aligned. Now we're not joining these, because we're not joining a shape like we did before. We're only just averaging the anchor points together to get alignment this time. So now I've completed this. This looks perfect. I'm going to marquee over it with my selection tool and right click and group it. So now I can move this around the artboard and it all keeps it together. So last bit of the skirt, I'm just going to make the kick flap, the little pleat, and it's pretty easy. All you do is zoom in, is grab your left or right anchor point, you can see that it doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you the harder way. You can actually, you remember we copied and pasted this side here to the other side, and then we arrowed it in. So actually it's overlapping that slightly, you can tell. See when I marquee, it's overlapping it. So if I just simply click on that little corner there, and I arrow down a couple of notches, it brings it down perfectly. And if I zoomed out, you'll see that looks great. But if you choose, because you might do this, and sometimes I do, if you choose the other side, which is actually the underneath layer, just click on the anchor point of the left side and just arrow down. You'll notice, you can actually see now that what I mean, that it's actually is sitting, this whole side is sitting underneath there. And if you do that, and you go, oh, okay, maybe I want to, I'm quite happy with that. you don't want to move it. So just go to your selection tool, click on that, select that whole side, and just maybe arrow over 1 or 2 notches. Maybe only 1. And I'll zoom in. That's pretty good. Maybe 1 more. But obviously I think the best thing to do is select the one that's overlapping. Okay, so now that looks awesome. Marquee over it, select the shape and group it. There we have it. The front and back skirt. I think that looks slightly thicker than the outside, but that's fine. I would accept that. That looks good. Okay, all done.